Good morning. Today on Spotlight, Nancy Lamont, National Vice President for AARP out of Washington, D.C. She's in town and she'll talk about what issues she's promoting for her organization that stretches across America. And later, Matt Pepper, Paul Huxley, and my colleague Alicia Smith on how the Michigan Humane Society is leaving important footprints on our region and state. It's Sunday, February the 4th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Nancy Lamont, fill in the blank for me. AARP what?
Advocates for people over the age of 50 so they can live their best lives.
All right. You were recently in town and you went down to the North American International Auto Show, had a chance to look around. A lot of talk about driverless cars, autonomous cars. Is this an issue that the senior population of the United States is concerned about?
Well, it's definitely an issue that seniors are beginning to focus on. And frankly, they're a little nervous about autonomous vehicles.
Why?
Well, I think part of it is they don't really understand all the features of autonomous vehicles at this point. What they've seen on TV or in magazines or a kind of a vehicle sitting there with no one in it moving down the street, and they're kind of wondering, how does that work? On the other hand, they are, I think, very intrigued by the tremendous possibilities autonomous vehicles offer. People over the age of 65, 40 million of them are driving, but many of them know that there's a point at which they're not going to be able to drive. They're not going to be able to get to doctor's appointments, to stores, to see their friends, and so I think they're quite intrigued by it.
Let's switch gears. Medicare, Social Security, will those two big words be around in the foreseeable future? They
will be. We're going to work hard to make sure they are. I think that we look forward to a point where there can be a real bipartisan conversation.
How do you get that in Washington these days?
It's very hard right now, to be honest. And we remain hopeful that in time we will be able to have that conversation, that we can talk about both of these programs as the vital economic lifelines they are for older Americans, and not have, in effect, one-off conversations in the context of the broader budget deficit, et cetera. That we can talk about them in terms of how do we strengthen them so they're there for future generations.
Tax reform, just had a new tax bill signed into law. What impact will that have on the generation that you represent? Well,
it really depends in part on one's income and if you're a small business owner, et cetera. So we can't kind of generalize about the impact, but we know for sure that there were a couple of provisions that were very important to people over the age of 65. The first was that we avoided putting in the tax bill some proposals to reduce payments, tax-free payments to 401ks.
Right.
That was something that was talked about. We were very worried about it. We and others were able to keep that from being part of the tax bill, so we think that was a good decision. The second item we really focused on in the tax bill was the medical deduction piece, and we're able to have that included in the tax bill. It had been previously in tax reform, and then it was dropped. But under this provision, you can deduct medical expenses that are more than 7.5% of your income. That's hugely important to people who have long-term care needs, who are paying excessive amounts of money if they have a disabled child. Very, very important. And as we see the bill unfold, we'll be there as the next discussion unfolds.
All right, we need to take a little break. When we come back, I want to talk about AARP from a power position, how you lobby and what you lobby for, and how you use celebrities sometimes to get that done. We'll be right back. Stay with us. AARP, the magazine, high profile,
Yes.
Oftentimes celebrities are on the front of it, I assume to help draw attention and get people to read what's inside there. How effective is that magazine, and how effective is your organization in terms of its lobbying efforts, or would you like to make it even more powerful than what it already is?
Well, we're always looking for ways to increase the volume of the voice of older Americans. So we're always looking for new opportunities. AARP The Magazine has been enormously popular. It is the most read publication in the United States. And if you've read it recently, I think you have.
I have. I get a subscription. I'm a card-carrying member.
Right.
Okay.
You know that it covers a range of issues, lifestyle issues, sometimes some of our advocacy positions, and it speaks to AARP's overall mission, which is to kind of fight for and enable people over the age of 50 to live their best lives. And they have anything from diet tips in the magazine to discussions of important issues. In fact, we hope a future issue will talk about some of what we've talked about while we've been here in Detroit, which is transportation needs of older Americans.
As you get feedback from membership, what is it they tell you that they're most concerned about, that they want to get the most information about?
Well, we have a variety of mechanisms to kind of listen to our members. We have a call center. We have our outreach that we do. You know, we have offices in every state, and increasingly a lot of people in various communities across the country. So we're always listening, and we're doing polling. And what we find is there's an awful amount of a lot of interest in what you'd call the key issues, Social Security, Medicare, the Affordable Care Act, and then increasingly in areas like jobs, retirement savings, transportation, affordable housing, and then the practical, you know, how do I deal with these scams that are coming to me by my phone at night or through my mailbox. Yeah. So it's a wide range of interests that we see with our members.
The Affordable Care Act, some people prefer calling it Obamacare, appears to have been gutted or is in the process of being gutted to a great extent under the current administration. From your vantage point, is that good or bad?
Well, we're very concerned. We had been very active against efforts to repeal the Affordable Care Act, very concerned about an age tax on older Americans, very concerned about pre-existing conditions. We know that through the tax bill, the mandate was repealed, and we have to see what effects that has, and we're very concerned. People over the age of 50 need to be able to get affordable health care. And we're concerned that there'll be steps taken through the regulatory process, if not the legislative process, to undermine the gains that have been made.
Ms. Lamont, you have about 650 staffers, about 19,000 volunteers. Is that enough of a force out there to get across the things that you're advocating for? Or are you in a position where you say, seniors, you need to be a whole lot more politically active, and we need a lot more people out there?
Well, we were very pleased at the number of activists who engaged during the Affordable Care Act campaign last year. There is no question, though, that there will be future issues that are where older Americans are going to have to raise their voices, and we hope that we'll see even more of them contacting members of Congress or state officials and giving people an idea of what it means to be older in this country. We're now in a year divisible by 2, which means that elections will be taking place across the country, and you will see us, as we have since the beginning of the organization, focusing on 2 things during the election cycle. The first is, how do we raise issues important to older Americans to candidates to be sure they're talking about them? And second, once they've talked about those issues, how can we help tell our members, hey, focus on what these candidates are saying before you go to the polls? One thing you can be pretty sure of is seniors go to the polls.
Would you describe the Trump administration as an AARP-friendly administration?
Well, There have been proposals that we have opposed. For example, the Affordable Care Act. There have been proposals that we have been working on quietly behind the scenes. We're hopeful that we'll be able to engage in a bipartisan infrastructure debate that will include some talk about broadband access, which we think is hugely important for seniors, particularly in rural areas. So I wouldn't characterize one way or the other, but we look at it from each individual issue, and we tend not to look at it from a partisan lens. We try to say, okay, we're here on behalf of people over the age of 50. Regardless of party, we're going to advocate what we believe and what we hear from our members.
In Michigan, we're going into a big campaign year this year, wide open gubernatorial election and many seats. What are the issues that you feel we as a state ought to be really concerned with, or what advice would you give to others here to say, look, you need to do this, this, and this to make sure that seniors are well represented and taken care of in this state?
Well, you may want to do a follow-up interview with our state director here,
we'll do that.
Here in Michigan, Paula Cunningham. I do know that one of the issues AARP Michigan has talked about raising in the context of the governor's race is livable communities. We're seeing across the country mayors, local officials focusing on the fact that there are more and more older people living in their communities.
We're living longer.
Absolutely. And we're staying in the places where we grew up or raised our kids. And so we're seeing cities, communities look at what they need to do to make their communities livable for people of all ages. And we think that's going to be an important issue that we raise in the context of the governor's race here. There may be other issues.
All right, I'm sure there will be, but that gives us a good start. Final question. One of the things that I think attract people to join AARP are the member benefits, whether it's automotive insurance or it's discounts when you go rent a car or a hotel for a night. Of those different benefits, and there are a lot of them if you have your AARP card, what's the most popular? What do you get the most feedback on?
Well, it really depends. You mentioned one of them earlier, which is AARP The Magazine and AARP The Bulletin. Our members love the publications. So that's a major attraction with the AARP membership. And people do like our products and services. They feel that they are geared toward people who are older, and they value that. And then, of course, discounts. I like to think that the most important reason is our advocacy, but it isn't always at the top of the list. But it certainly is one of the factors people look at when they join AARP.
All right, Nancy Lamont, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure having you. Anytime you come back, just tell your team, let us know, and we'll get you back in the seat.
I'd be delighted to do that.
When Spotlight returns, what are we as a community doing for our four-legged friends? They'll tell us. You built a brand new facility on the north end section of Detroit. I had the pleasure of getting a tour of it about a year or so ago, maybe a little less. And I can tell you, I was blown away by all of the technology and thought that went into building that facility. Talk a little bit about that and where we rank nationally.
Well, first of all, thank you both for having me, Alicia, Chuck, because I could not be sitting next to people who are more passionate about animal welfare. I've had the honor of touring you both through the facility.
Yes.
We've been in Detroit for 140 years, and we're incredibly proud of what we're doing, our work that we're doing in the community with the animals, on behalf of the animals, and all the people that impacts. But that facility is something that this community can be proud of. It was designed to be a community hub for animal welfare. And animal welfare isn't just an animal issue, it's a community issue. It's something that everyone should have the opportunity to experience in their life, and it means so much to all of us. But the facility is designed to be the best possible environment for the animals, to be an inviting facility, to be a beacon of hope for the four-legged friends, or like my little dog that from that facility, a three-legged friend. It has been an incredible facility, and our ability to save lives and impact lives, both four-legged and two, has been exponentially impacted by that facility.
Say I'm a big fan of the cat room there. You have to check it out if you're a cat lover.
You're a cat lover.
And they have dog runs for the dogs. I mean, you literally thought of every detail.
Yeah.
It was remarkable.
That cat room, I want to be my office. I don't think very little would get done.
With the big windows and the high perches, yeah.
When you built the new facility, you had a choice. You could either keep it in the area that it was, or you could build it anywhere in the metro region that you wanted. But you said, we're going to keep it right here because it's now an anchor for development, for employment, and all of those other things.
Yeah, it was very important to us in terms of a decision process. As Matt said, the organization goes back 140 years in Detroit. Henry Ford was actually a big part of starting the Michigan Humane Society.
Really? Wow.
And the North End area where the shelter now sits is a booming new part of the metropolitan Detroit area. All kinds of development going on there. And we're sort of away from Woodward, 4 or 5 blocks, but we thought if we had an anchor there, that the ability to infill that area with new housing and new developments and new businesses would be would really be accelerated. So that was part of our thinking. Is it's the right place to be in Detroit. It's just a few blocks north of where our old facility was, and the old facility we gave to the city of Detroit. So that they could use that for their Detroit animal control process.
Right. Alicia, about 10 years ago, and I may be off by a year or two, you sort of lent your name to the many causes that the Michigan Humane Society has, as well as just your love, particularly of cats, but I think you like dogs too,
I do. I just can't have dogs where I live right now, and I just got into rescuing cats, so that's kind of how that happened, but I love them all.
Well, you know, there's that old adage, a pet or a dog or a cat makes a house a home. And I think that's really true. As someone who owns a dog, I know that, and I know what it did for my own kids, and how much it's become a part of the family. Sometimes a real expensive part of the family.
Sure,
But I've also never seen stories in our business touch the viewers more than stories about dogs and cats and sometimes other animals.
Yeah, those tend to be the videos that go viral, and I completely get it because I think animals enrich our lives so much, and they give all of their love. You know, they don't judge you. They snuggle. They're there when you're at your lowest low, right? At least that's been my experience. And so I have been so privileged and honored to have been invited to be a part of the Telethon for the last 10 years. This will be 10 years. I can't believe it. It's been wonderful.
And it's coming up, and we'll talk about that.
Yes,
in just a little bit.
and also, you know, the Mega March for Animals and all the wonderful activities that the Michigan Humane Society does in order to help tell these stories of the wonderful impact MHS has in the community. I've been able to show those wonderful reunions where an owner was reconnected with their dachshund that ran away, and MHS found the little buddy and scanned that microchip, and they made that reunion happen. I've been there when rescue teams have gone out and pulled puppies from storm drains. I've been there when I've seen the rescue teams, you know, belly crawl to rescue a dog in a dumpster. I mean, the stories go on and on and on, but I think they really touch at the core of that experience of loving an animal and what they give back to us. It's so much more.
All right, and we're going to pick up on that theme in just a second. And there, of course, there was the raccoon story the other day that was in Royal Oak. And I called in, they said, we've got 1,000 people on Facebook watching what's going to happen to this raccoon. We'll be back in a second. We'll pick up, talk more about the Telethon coming up and everything else related to the Michigan Humane Society. Stay with us. In just a couple of days, the dogs and cats will literally take over Channel 7, and we two-legged people, well, we'll just be kind of relegated to to some corner while they do their thing here. Alicia, we got a big telethon coming up.
So
tell us a little bit about that.
Thursday, February the 8th, all day long here at Broadcast House. This is one of those events, literally, I don't even know how we get a newscast on the air sometimes when we have the telethon, because everybody's going back and forth and checking on the kittens and the puppies and all that. But the biggest thing is we want to hear those phones ring and people are so giving here in Metro Detroit. Every single year they see the stories of all the good that MHS is doing, and people call in and they donate because they know every dollar helps these homeless animals find a happy home.
Those animals are really a conduit and a window to the community. And so you think about things like economic development. Americans will spend about $70 billion on their pets this year. And with
billion with a capital B.
With a B.
Wow, yeah.
And I sometimes think I'm half of that. But if you think about how...
And Paul is sitting on the other half.
I got to be at least
Yeah.
He's the other half.
You need the chew toys. Yeah.
Well, I often joke, this man in Strategic Staffing Solutions is the second largest shelter in the city with how many animals have adopted.
You have it work. I love it. Yeah.
But if you think about how many animals we have placed into this community through adoption, and through other various reasons, how many we facilitated into a better environment, and then the money that those people will spend on their animals in the Tri-County area, we estimate that MHS alumni alone can spend between $40 and $45 million on their animals and into this economy, putting money into this economy in this community.
In the design of the shelter, in the area surrounding the shelter, there's a dog park that's in our plans. We have a community room so that community associations and block groups, if they want to meet in our facility, they can do that. We've hired a number of people from the immediate community. We have a lot of volunteers from the immediate community. So we've really tried to become an important part of what the community sees as the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I just have to salute you and your team because we were doing stories to prepare for the telethon. I went out recently with the animal cruelty investigators and the rescue teams, and we went by the pet pantry. The line was outside the building and down the street of people who were there because, you know, for whatever reason they're having a tough time and they can't afford pet food. And so they were there. It was like below freezing, standing in line, smiles on their faces, excited because they were about to get some assistance with feeding their animals, which will allow them to keep their animals.
None of what we do is possible without community support. We are funded by the community. While we have statewide presence, we are Detroit's Humane Society, and we are, the work we do is only possible through community support, foundations, corporations, and individual support.
Don't forget to watch the telethon that's coming up in just a couple of days, and you'll be able to see my colleague Alicia Smith front and center.
And all the puppies
and
volunteers.
All the puppies and the
and
cats.
all the great staff and faculty at MHS.
And if she can convince her husband, she just might take another cat home.
We'll have some.
I have it.
And we should probably clarify for people who don't know that Paul Huxley and Miss Cindy Paskey of Strategic Staffing are husband and wife, and you are passionate about animals, and
she's
so
even crazier than I am.
She's even crazier. All right, just so people know that association, and they're one of Detroit's most giving couple. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight. We hope you have a great week.